Hello, my name is Michael Doyle, and for discussion board number one, I will be discussing George Whitefield. The Great Awakening that swept through the American colonies during the 1730s and 1740s brought about a new passion and fervor for Christianity that seemed to have gone stale over the decades. During the 1700s, there was a movement amongst the philosophical giants of the time in Europe. This sparked a movement called the Enlightenment, or Age of Reason, and it began to make its way across the Atlantic Ocean to the American colonies. There was a heavy emphasis on science and thinking of the world in a logical manner, which began to downplay religion. Enter George Whitefield. George Whitefield's passion for preaching, his larger-than-life persona, and shrewdness for publicity and marketing himself gave way to him becoming one of the key figures of the Great Awakening, the ripples of which can still be felt today. Whitefield was known in England from his time as an itinerant minister, not being assigned a pulpit after ordination. And he preached to those who normally did not go to church and found that his passionate delivery elicited emotional responses from the audience. Much of the success that Whitefield experienced in the American colonies was due to his age and the eloquent theatrical skills that he molded into a new and electrifying sermon style. But most of the colonists were used to a more formal church service and sermon, with much less theatrics. There was an intrigue amongst the colonists to see the young preacher in his fiery sermons, but there was more going on than just Whitefield at the pulpit. Throughout Whitefield's tours of the American colonies, he made it a point to draw attention to what the local church was, or in his eyes, was not doing correctly. What set George Whitefield apart from other itinerants during the Great Awakening was his use of the press. According to Frank Lambert in Peddler of Divinity, George Whitefield and the Great Awakening, 1737 through 1745, published in 1990, in the first year of Whitefield's public ministry, press coverage helped elevate him and his revival to an unprecedented level of popular acceptance. While Whitefield was not yet ordained as an Anglican minister and little known outside of his hometown of Gloucester, England, he became the best-known evangelist in the Atlantic world, in large part because of the newspaper advertising, which interpreted his preaching as a Second Reformation. Whitefield's understanding of the use of this medium allowed him to announce where he would be going ahead of time so that the colonists would show up in droves. Often the amount of people that showed were so many that he had to have his services in fields and clearings. Though Whitefield was a preacher and man of faith, he understood the power of publicity in the printed word. He himself had complete control over the coverage that the press received about him. It's said that the itinerant reported his own performances and successes, producing third-person accounts of his latest preaching tour in the Middle Colonies, complete with puffs, or puff pieces. George Whitefield has been categorized as someone who, even though he did not live to see the American Revolution, was a loud, defining voice that helped colonists have the ideas and the will to rebel from Great Britain. They heard his words and encouragement to dissent. This rhetoric helped plant the seeds of revolution and helped inspire many of our founding fathers, including Thomas Jefferson. The Great Awakening and George Whitefield had lasting impacts on Christianity in the American colonies, from which the ripples can be still felt today. Regardless of his reputation, with the clergy, Whitefield was able to captivate audiences and lead many to salvation, shaking up the status quo. Thank you for your time.